Hello, and welcome to Badger Talks Live Quick Picks, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. My name is Sydney Reed, an undergraduate student studying legal studies with interest in pursuing a career in the professional sports industry. Badger Talk Live is celebrating the month of March with UW Athletics. I'm pleased to introduce Director of Name, Image, and Likeness, Brian Mason. Today, he will shed light on how changes to regulations regarding student-athletes' use of their name, image, and likeness have benefited Badgers and businesses alike over the last 18 months. Brian was named Director of Name, Image, Likeness Strategy in August 2022. A 15-year veteran of Wisconsin athletics, Brian leads UW's NIL strategy and the ongoing development of the Badgers' holistic NIL program, YouDub. Brian moved to Director of NIL Strategy from a longtime role as part of the Badgers communications staff. He spent 12 seasons working directly with the Wisconsin football program and promoted the Badgers during a run that included 3 Big Ten championships, 6 appearances in the Big Ten football championship game, and 6 New Year's 6 bowl games. In more than a decade with the football program, Brian promoted 21 first-team All-Americans, including awards campaigns for Heisman Trophy finalists Montee and Melvin Gordon. In addition to football, he worked with the UW men's basketball team during the Badgers NCAA tournament appearance in 2010 and Sweet 16 season in 2011, and later assisted in the communications efforts during the program's consecutive runs to the Final Four in 2014 and 2015. Questions will be directed to the Badger Talks Facebook group after his talk. See the link in the chat. Please welcome Brian Mason.
Thanks, Sydney, for the introduction. And thank you all for joining us today. As Sydney said, my name is Brian Mason. I am the Director of Name, Image, Likeness Strategy for the Wisconsin Athletic Department. And looking forward today to diving into what NIL has looked like over the last 18 months or so since regulations changed in July of 2021, how our student athletes have benefited from those changes in regulation, and also how the businesses and brands that they are working with have benefited in this new era of name, image, and likeness. And we'll start with a little bit of a history lesson and then move into how that's brought us to today. But before we do that, let's take a look at a video that encapsulates a little bit of what NIL means at Wisconsin. When I think about NIL and I think about what it means here and how we've chosen to approach it, it's where does this seismic change in college sports fit within what we have always known college sports to be. From the beginning, we've really looked at NIL as something that would be a benefit to our student athletes. Ideally, some dollars in their pockets, and the things it can mean for them long term.
Oh, hey.
Hey, what's up, Chim?
Evans Transportation.
I think that's really important for a lot of student athletes to kind of be able to get experience in marketing themselves, handling situations where you're really working in that space. And so hopefully when you play professionally, or even when you're pursuing a professional career outside of sports, you're able to kind of know what it's like to be able to navigate that space or spaces like it.
Hepburn left side with 3, with 2. Hepburn down! Off the glass! Off the glass!
It all starts with putting in the work to be able to go out and perform right, because I know if I don't perform well, I'm not going to get these opportunities. That's what I love about it, Once they're able to show our best potential, that's when companies see that.
You're supporting them in terms of their athletic performance. You're supporting them in terms of academic achievement. You're supporting them in terms of personal development. Well, now you add a 4th pillar, and that's financial advancement.
Honestly, at first when NIL became a thing, I figured it was more for football players or men's basketball players, the bigger sports, the revenue getters, but all of a sudden I realized there's some meat in the game for us too. Like we can, start advocating for ourselves.
Being successful is being myself while also connecting with brands that like me for who I am and the content that I post. There's a really great support system here at Wisconsin trying to navigate the new rules of NIL and how to take advantage of it in the right way.
The fact that we have this incredible fan base and this amazing opportunity to tap into the brands that are here, the fans that are here, the people for whom the W in Wisconsin means everything, that's a huge advantage for our student athletes and something that isn't going to change. So how do we do everything we can do to help them tap into that? That's our guiding principle every day. Well, it's no coincidence that you saw Sydney Reed from our volleyball program in that video. No coincidence that Sydney introduced me today, because Sydney is a student athlete who has taken full advantage of all things that NIL has to offer for student athletes and has totally embraced the opportunity. And it's no coincidence that you will see more. You've seen more of her, and you'll see more of the other student athletes who were featured in that video: Casey O'Brien from women's hockey, Chucky Hepburn from men's basketball, and Chimray Dike from football, as we go along and look through some of the examples of where our student athletes have thrived in the area of NIL today. But before we get to that, I want to start with a little bit of a history lesson on how we got to this place. And going back in time as far as you'd like to go, college student athletes were largely prevented from utilizing their right to publicity, that is, their name, their image, and their likeness, in terms of being able to monetize that right to publicity. The ground started to change over the last decade, and it really began to come to a head in 2019 when California became the first the first state to pass an NIL-specific law. Other states followed, and that trend continued, and the pressure that made it clear that changes to the NIL landscape were likely going to be on the horizon really came to a head in June of 2021 when the NCAA versus Alston case was put before the Supreme Court, and a scathing decision was handed down that though that case did not materially involve NIL, certainly influenced how the NCAA chose to approach the beginning of the NIL era and the lifting of NIL restrictions on July 1st of that year. And so what schools like us at Wisconsin had prepared for, which was likely to be a heavily regulated environment, as most things in the NCAA ecosystem are, truly became something where, outside of a few key rules, which we'll see here in a second, schools were left to determine their path in terms of NIL largely on their own. And, I talked about those state laws a moment ago, and you can see that map, which I hate to tell you is already out of date because a number of states that had passed NIL-specific legislation have since either amended or entirely rescinded those bills because they feel that the institutions in their state have been put at a competitive disadvantage by some of those state laws. Here in Wisconsin, we've never had a state NIL law, and we think that's been advantageous for us and for our student athletes because we've largely been able to be governed by our own institutional policy, which is one that we feel greatly benefits our student athletes and gives them every opportunity to fully maximize their NIL opportunity. With that in mind, there are some specific NIL rules to know. Now, what is NIL? Again, it's that right to publicity that student athletes can now exercise. It means they have the ability to be compensated for things that often are the first things thought of when it comes to NIL: endorsements, social media posts, but it also includes appearances, autographs, camps, hosting their own clinics, and a variety of other activities that they can be compensated for. Can also involve in-kind deals. It does not have to be cash payments. And importantly, the NIL era has ushered in an ability for student athletes, including in the state of Wisconsin, to be able to retain marketing representatives or agents to help them navigate this space. Importantly, I talked about those key NIL rules about what NIL is not. Those are on the right side of the screen, and there's three major areas. One is that NIL agreements cannot be provided without a quid pro quo, meaning simply student athletes must do an activity in order to be compensated for their NIL. You have to do something to be paid. NIL agreements cannot constitute pay for play. That is, the compensation cannot be based on participation in athletics or performance. Think a deal that would pay a student athlete a higher rate if they scored more points in a basketball game, for instance. Those types of things are not allowed. And most importantly, the rule that comes into the headlines the most that we read about on a daily basis is the use of NIL agreements as recruiting inducements, meaning that compensation for NIL is tied to a student athlete's enrollment or continued enrollment at a particular institution. So those are the high level rules that guide our student athletes' involvement in NIL. But on a more localized level, again, we're largely governed by our own policy here at the University of Wisconsin, which was part of our overall approach to taking a look at the landscape and saying, how do we best position our student athletes for success in this new era? So from the beginning, we've leaned in, as the video said, we've leaned into making this something that is a positive for student athletes. We've dedicated staff, such as myself. We've realigned resources that already existed in order to better serve student athletes and their needs as things have changed in the NIL era. Most important, or not most importantly, but of high importance, is that we've given our student athletes the opportunity to leverage the corporate partnerships and sponsorships that are in place with the sponsors who already were proud partners of Wisconsin athletics. Through our policy, those partners are able to utilize university trademarks and other assets in ways that other brands are not, and that now can trickle down to their NIL activities. You see Braylon Allen there on the screen in a social media advertisement for Pepsi. He's appearing in his uniform, utilizing the trademarks. That's allowed, and we think that's something that's advantageous for our student athletes and certainly advantageous for our partners. We've also entered into some beneficial group licensing agreements that allow merchandise with student athletes' names and numbers to be sold at the Buc-ee's locker room stores here in Madison, even within Camp Randall and at the Kohl Center, and also through the official online store of Wisconsin Athletics, which is buckeslockerroom.com, which is run by Fanatics, the leading athletics apparel retailer. And every time an article is sold with a student athlete's name and number, they receive a royalty payment for that. Beyond those, we established what we call the YouDub Marketplace, which is a forward-facing marketplace for any fan, brand, or business to pitch and fulfill NIL opportunities with student athletes. You can pitch a deal to any one of our nearly 800 student athletes across all 23 sports. They all have a place on that platform. And outside of international student athletes who, to this point, due to visa regulations, are not allowed to take part in NIL activities, all other student athletes are available to be pitched and executed NIL deals through that marketplace. And then we, of course, provide student athletes with resources and educational support in areas like brand building, social media, financial literacy, taxes, elements that have really come into their daily lives on a more regular basis now that they're able to exercise their NIL opportunities. Along those same lines, an important resource that has come along in the last 9 months or so is a third-party group called the Varsity Collective. Now, the Varsity Collective is a registered 501c3 charitable organization. It is a third party. It exists outside of the university and outside of Wisconsin athletics. But importantly, the Varsity Collective was founded and is operated by UW alumni who see NIL the same way that we do within athletics. And that is a holistic opportunity that can serve student athletes now in terms of some dollars in their pockets, but also can help them build the skills, networks, and other tools that they need that they can utilize to succeed in whatever field they choose to go into. We talk all the time here that the skills student athletes need to succeed in NIL are not NIL skills. They are life skills, they are personal development skills, they're business skills. And those are the types of things that NIL gives them a jumpstart on. And the collective is fully embracing of that mentality and that approach that we have in athletics. And frankly, in this day and age, having a donor group or a collective like the Varsity Collective is very important for across the competitive landscape of college sports. And we're very fortunate to have the collective working in alignment with the values and vision of Wisconsin athletics when it comes to NIL and serving our student athletes on a daily basis. The collective's work largely revolves around taking donor contributions and utilizing those to make NIL opportunities for student athletes to promote and serve as brand ambassadors for charitable organizations. So it's a situation that can do good on a lot of fronts, and again is very important to our competitive standpoint in this new world of college sports. But what I really want to dive into today is how brands and student athletes have benefited in a mutually beneficial way from NIL. And when we look at businesses that have taken the NIL opportunity and run with it, I have to start with Pepsi. Now, Pepsi is a cornerstone partner for us here in Wisconsin athletics. And as a part of that partnership, has use of university trademarks, the Motion W, the proud partner of Wisconsin Badgers, all of those things that you see in their sponsorships and advertisements now apply to the NIL space as well. And I love Bucky Badger. We all love Bucky Badger. And when you see Bucky on the side of Pepsi's trucks moving product around town, that's great. But now with NIL, Pepsi can utilize student athletes and really personify the Badgers and personify the teams that people are so passionate about in a completely different way. And again, that's beneficial for our student athletes. So we've seen Pepsi embark on multi-channel statewide marketing campaigns. You've probably seen the TV commercials. You've seen the displays in grocery stores around the state. If you drive around Dane County, you can't help but see the billboards for Mountain Dew with 3 of our men's basketball student athletes who are pictured on this slide. And that has benefited our football student athletes with Pepsi, benefited our men's basketball student athletes with Mountain Dew. But truly, Pepsi's buy-in to NIL has gone far beyond just those very visible campaigns. Devin Robinson from the volleyball team is an important social influencer for Pepsi's Bubbler sparkling water brand. And then most recently, Pepsi has utilized our YouDub marketplace to pitch to all 800 student athletes the ability to apply to a campaign to help promote their new Starry Lemon Lime Soda. And I think around a dozen student athletes have been selected for that campaign by Pepsi and are influencing on social, leveraging their platforms, especially among their peers here on campus, to promote that new product. Now, Pepsi is a really well-known brand, obviously. Evans Transportation is not. And that's part of why Evans got involved in the NIL space to begin with. So Evans is a transportation logistics company based out of the Milwaukee area and run by a former Badger student athlete, football player named Ryan Keepman. And Ryan saw an opportunity with NIL, one, to directly support student athletes like he was himself back in the day, but also to leverage the Badger brand in a new way to help drive some brand awareness for Evans. And that brand, like I said, is not necessarily a household name. So Evans signed NIL opportunities with Molly Schlosser from the softball team, as well as Chimray Dike from the football team. I don't have time in this 15-minute window that I have today to show you Chim's commercial with Evans, but I'd encourage you to go to YouTube and search Evans Transportation, Chimray Dike. It's hilarious and a great example of what student athlete NIL activations can look like and what student athletes can bring to the table. And importantly for Evans, the campaigns they've embarked on with our student athletes have brought results. This campaign has outperformed their partnership with a PGA golfer. And you can hear from Ryan in his own words here, talking about that equally beneficial partnership that he sees. And I think the important thing to point out in this testimonial from Ryan is that last line. He talks about the fact that engaging with student athletes in NIL has been super fun. And that, I think, is an advantage of working with student athletes in this space is there's inherently a lighthearted, fun nature to these campaigns. And the next one that I'm going to highlight is the most emblematic of that, maybe of any, and that is Quick Trip. And this one is close to my heart because it was led by a student athlete. Casey O'Brien is a captain on our national championship women's hockey team. And Casey did an internship with a marketing agency last summer, really gained a lot of confidence in her skills and in her own ability to go out and pitch a brand. So obviously Quick Trip is an important part of life in the state of Wisconsin, an important brand, and one that Casey felt really aligned with herself and some of her teammates. So she pitched Quick Trip on the idea of a TikTok marketing campaign. Now, it was unbeknownst to Casey that Quick Trip had a partnership existing with UW Athletics, but what it turned into was a case where Badger Sports Properties, the sponsorship sales group that works alongside athletics here, was able to help iron out all the kinks and make sure that Quick Trip got the most value out of this campaign by allowing the student athletes who were involved, and it grew to about 10 women's hockey student athletes who were creating TikTok content for Quick Trip. But they were able to leverage the university trademarks. They were able to leverage LeBron Arena or certain parts of it to shoot some of their TikTok videos. And I'm no expert on what works on TikTok, but the videos are hilarious. The student athletes had a great time, and obviously we're compensated for that. And I think Quick Trip derived a lot of value from what the student athletes brought to the table on a platform that really works for them on a daily basis, which is TikTok. And they were able to take that expertise in addition to their platform and do something that was really beneficial for a brand. On a completely different topic, stepping away from fun for a minute and talking about a serious topic, which is medical research. Now, the All of Us research campaign is an effort run by the National Institutes of Health and has a branch on the UW campus. Now, All of Us is challenge has been driving signups for their research program. And all of us approached Badger Sports Properties saying, is there an opportunity for student athletes to serve as sort of ambassadors to their peers? Because that's the group that all of us is targeting on campus and has had a hard time driving signups, and that's college students. So what they were able to do is put together a list of student athletes who have interest in fields such as research, medicine, really find authentic partnerships with student athletes across a number of sports. And then those student athletes were able to utilize their social platforms to promote in-person sign-up events and just general awareness of the All of Us campaign. And importantly, why I use this example is because all of us is seeing the results that it had hoped to see, which is more students showing up at those on-campus recruiting events, saying that they are there because they heard about it through social media content they saw from their student athlete peers. And then most importantly, all of us is actually seeing signups come as a result of that increased exposure. So at a recent in-person event where 2 student athletes appeared at the sign-up event at the Nicholas Recreation Center here on campus, all of us was able to generate 17 new student signups for its program, which may not sound like a lot, but in many cases, all of us is considering an in-person event a success if it gets a single sign-up. So again, leveraging the platform and the influence of student athletes on their peers has been very beneficial for all of us to help achieve its goals of getting more people signed up for that program. And the last example I want to show is an example of how student athletes can help become the face of a brand, or in this case, a startup or a new product. So Ignite Blocks is an inventive product developed by Jody Goldbeck, who is an entrepreneur based out of Middleton here in the Madison area. And what she created is a set of lightweight mobile starting blocks that track and field and football athletes specifically can utilize. It's easy to throw in their bag, take to wherever they're training, and get their sprint workouts in. So Jody approached us saying, how do I do this? I think Wisconsin track student athletes would be the ultimate faces of my new product. So how do I do that? Well, we directed her to the YouDub marketplace, talked through how to whittle that population of around 800 student athletes down to the track teams. And then from there, how to look and find the sprinters, right? The people who use starting blocks that would be great examples of someone to demo this new product. And Jody was able to connect with L.O. Johnson, who happens to be the fastest man in Badger history, and a teammate from the women's track team, Armani Brown. And L.O. and Armani were pitched the deal through the YouDub marketplace, reached back out to Jody, connected, and as you can see from the photos, have become the first faces of Ignite Blocks for this startup product. And I think Jody's testimonial here speaks to how not only can this be a fun space, not only can student athletes be effective marketers, but the barrier to entry to getting involved with student athletes in NIL to promote your business or your cause or your brand it's not a high barrier to entry. And student athletes are excited about working in these spaces. So, Jody talks about there that she will definitely come back for more. And I think that kind of encapsulates the totality of what we hope to get across here from UW Athletics is that our student athletes are open for business, that they are effective marketers, can help you achieve your business's marketing objectives, and it doesn't have to be hard. This can be easy. It doesn't have to be high cost, but it can be very effective. So that's a look at the NIL landscape as it exists here for student athletes at the University of Wisconsin, and a little bit of look at how student athletes and businesses are mutually benefiting from NIL opportunities. There's a lot of questions out there. It's been an emphasis for us in the new year to get out and help educate our community, help educate the business community on what's possible with NIL. And today's a great example of that. But if you have questions, please give that QR code on the screen a scan. You'll get my contact information, and I'm happy to help connect the dots on answering your questions and getting you pointed in the right direction for figuring out how student athletes can help benefit your business, your brand, or something as simple as finding someone to attend your son or daughter's birthday party or sign an autograph. NIL is full of opportunity for student athletes, but it's also full of opportunity for the brands that surround us here in the Madison community and the greater state of Wisconsin, and also our fans. So it's a really exciting time. I would encourage everyone to get involved. And I look forward to fielding your questions. So that's all I've got for today on the NIL opportunity at Wisconsin and how it's benefiting student athletes and brands. And at this point, we'll be moving over to the Badger Talks Facebook group to answer any questions you may have. So I hope to see you there. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for watching this Badger Talks live event produced by the University of Wisconsin-Madison through UW Connect's outreach and the Office of State Relations. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube to see the library of past recorded talks. Please visit badgertalks.wisc.edu to see the schedule of upcoming talks, sign up for the Badger Talks email list, and search the roster of over 400 UW experts who are available to give talks on important issues in your Wisconsin community.